Hi class, so in this third concept we are going to be taking a look at the structure and function of the heart, and we're going to look at the cardiac cycle, which is what happens when your heart beats. So we're going to start with a diagram of the heart and the pathway of the blood through the heart in particular. So we have a diagram, and as in the previous lesson, the right hand side of the heart will be on the left side of the screen, and the left side of the heart will be on the right side of the screen, because we are looking at this diagram as though somebody is in front of us, facing us. Okay? So we take a look. We have the superior and the inferior vena cava, right, which go into the right atrium, right? So this is receiving blood from the body, right? It's colored a bluish purple color because it is low oxygen, high carbon dioxide, right? From there, the blood goes into the right ventricle. So you'll notice the upper heart chambers, by the way, all four of them are called chambers, right? The word chamber is like a word meaning room. So there's basically four little rooms inside the heart. The ones that are upper or closer to your head, they're called atria, right? Two of them, atria, or singular atrium, right? It's not atrium and atriums, because these are Latin words. Some of their plural endings are a little bit weird. So, from the right atrium, it goes into another chamber called the right ventricle. Okay? The ventricles are a little bit bigger than the atriums. To go from the right atrium to the right ventricle, the blood must pass through a valve. Okay, a valve, remember, is a one-way doorway that allows things to go in one path, but then when it closes up when things try to go backwards. So the valve will allow the blood to go from the atrium to the ventricle, but not from the ventricle back to the atrium, right? And this ensures that your blood only flows in one direction. Okay, so this one is called the tricuspid valve. It's called that way because there are three parts to this valve, three little curves, but you can only see two. It's a cross section. So, which means it's like a slice of the heart. Okay, so from the right ventricle, you can see there's another set of valves. The blood will pass through the set of valves and go into the pulmonary artery. You can see there's one on that goes in this direction, that goes to your left lung, and one in the other direction goes to your right lung, right? And then coming back from the lungs, right? So arteries away, what brings the blood back? The veins. So there's a pulmonary vein, and you can see there are some pulmonary veins on both the left and the right hand sides, right? Because you have two lungs, right? These ones here going to coming from the left lung, and these ones are coming from the right lung, right? And they'll pour, so this pulmonary vein is going behind all of this stuff, right? And probably there's some holes behind this pulmonary artery feeding into the left atrium. From the left atrium, the blood will go through this valve. So this is called your mitral valve. It's also called your bicuspid valve, because there's only two of these little round pieces, right? So it goes through there, and then it can't go back, right? So we're keeping the blood flowing forward. Then you have the left ventricle, right? And from the left ventricle, now it can go through your aorta, right? So there's a valve there called your aortic valve. Makes sense, right? So the pulmonary valve stops blood from going backward in your pulmonary artery, and your aortic valve stops it going backward from your aorta, right? And once again, the right side of the heart has the low oxygen blood, right? Because it's going to the pulmonary artery and it's going to go to the lung. And the left side of the heart is full of high oxygen blood, and that's going to be pumped out of your aorta to all of your systemic arteries and your body cells to deliver the oxygen to them. Around the heart, we have a covering called the pericardium, right? It's just a little piece of basically lining tissue that holds the heart together and keeps it away from other things in your system. So, really, your heart only basically has one function. You can argue that there's three functions. Really, heart has one main function, and that's to pump blood. Okay? So, we know about the four chambers of the heart: the right atrium, the right ventricle, the left atrium, and the left ventricle. The right atrium fills with blood returning from your body, which has low oxygen and high carbon dioxide, right? All of the oxygen went to your body cells, and then they filled it with their waste, which is carbon dioxide. Then it goes into the right ventricle. It receives the blood from the right atrium and pumps the low oxygen blood to your lungs, where it fills up on oxygen again and gets rid of all of that carbon dioxide. The left atrium fills with blood returning from the lungs, usually high oxygen, low carbon dioxide. The left ventricle receives blood from the left atrium and pumps the high oxygen blood to all of the body cells through the aorta and all of the arteries. Both atria fill with blood at the same time and pump blood out at the same time. So your heartbeat sort of has two parts, like the lub dub, boom boom, boom boom, right? The first beat of your heartbeat is the one that's sort of fainter, is your arteries contracting, right? And what you actually hear when you hear the heartbeat is the valve slamming shut after opening, right? So that first beat is from this tricuspid valve and this mitral valve, right? And the second part of your heartbeat is your ventricles contracting. Okay? Your ventricles are, in general, much more powerful than your arteries. So this pink business around sorry, I said arteries, I meant atria. Your ventricles are stronger than your atria. So you can see this little pink business. This is muscle, right? The ones around the atria are very thin, and that's because they only have to pump into the ventricle. Meanwhile, the ventricles are both thicker than the atrium chambers because the right one has to go to your lungs, and the left one has to go to your entire body. And if you compare the ventricles, you can even see that the left ventricle is much thicker than the right ventricle. And that's how I used to tell them apart when I was a student, because I used to have a real difficulty remembering which was the right-hand side and which was the left-hand side. So I always remembered to look for the thick muscle, and that was the left ventricle, right? The left ventricle is more muscular because it's got to push the blood to every cell in your body, whereas the right ventricle just has to push it to your lungs, and your lungs are right behind your heart, so that's not as far. So, the atria contract and they fill the ventricles, and then the ventricles contract and they pump the blood out, right? So, and then the beat, right, would be these valves closing here, the pulmonary valve and the aortic valve. So these two have a name together. These are called the semilunar valves, right? And the ones between the atrium and ventricles, sometimes if we're talking about both of them, we call them the atrioventricular valves because they're between the atrium and the ventricle, right? AV valves. So both atria fill with blood at the same time and pump blood out at the same time. Both ventricles fill with blood at the same time and pump blood out at the same time. The left ventricle is more muscular because it has to pump the blood farther, and your heart pumps blood 24 hours per day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, and when it stops, you stop, right? So we want it to keep going. The blood also has like two other more minor functions, right? The pumping is its main function, but it also, there's a little wall between the two sides of the heart, the left side and the right side. So one more minor job that the heart has is to keep the oxygenated blood on the left hand side and the deoxygenated blood on the right hand side separate, right? And the reason why is because if they mix, right, some of the oxygen is going to go to the right hand side, right, and then it's going to get another trip to the lungs. That's not going to do anything. And some of the deoxygenated blood will be pumped to your body cells, and like then no oxygen will be delivered to that body cell. So we don't want that, right? So we have the septum, and this septum keeps the non-oxygenated blood on the left, the non-oxygenated blood on the right side of the heart, and the oxygenated blood on the left side. Some people genetically, or like through being born and developing, they actually have holes in the septum. And sometimes, when they're playing sports, they find out because they have when you're doing sports and when you're exercising, your heart is pumping harder, and it can increase the size of the hole, and then people can collapse, and it can be quite a serious medical emergency, right? They have to get the surgery to close the hole, and then they start feeling a lot better. But that's something that comes up often sometimes. And then the last thing that the last function of the heart is keeping blood moving in one direction, right? We don't want it to go backwards. And this is why we have these valves. So remember, valves are one-way doors, right? They keep the blood flowing in one direction. So these ventricles only open these valves only open, right, when the blood is going from the atrium to the ventricle. And if it tries to go the other way, it's closed. The same thing with the pulmonary valve, right? Your blood can only travel from the ventricle to the pulmonary artery and not backwards. Okay? So 3 functions of the heart, with pumping the blood being the big one that you want to focus on. So now we're going to take a look at what happens when the heart beats, right? And this is called the cardiac cycle. So the cardiac cycle are all of the events that happen during one heartbeat. But it's a cycle, right? So these 3 steps keep continuing in the same order. So we're going to start with cardiac diastole, right? Those are some big words. Cardiac just means heart. And diastole, in this case, we're going to say it means relaxation. Okay? So if something is diastole, it's relaxed, right? The only time that you'll ever probably use the word diastole is in relationship to this. So cardiac diastole, all of the chambers of the heart are relaxed, right? And because they're relaxed, it makes it easier for them to fill up with blood, right? When you're imagining this, imagine you have a water balloon in your hand, okay? It's much easier to fill the water balloon if your hand muscles are relaxed and not squeezing the balloon, right? If your hand muscles are squeezing the water balloon, it puts tension on, and then the sides can't stretch. So, So all of these muscles surrounding the heart are relaxed, and blood will flow in, right? It'll allow it to expand to accept the blood. So you can see the superior vena cava contains deoxygenated or blue blood coming back from your head and upper body, right? You can see that up here. And the inferior vena cava contains deoxygenated or blue blood coming from your lower body, okay? So both of these will empty into the right atrium. So the blood is going to flow into here. Likewise, right, on the other side of the heart, on the left side of the heart, the pulmonary veins carry oxygenated blood back from your lungs to your left atrium. So these are going to fill at the same time when all of the muscles in your heart are relaxed. Okay, both atria fill up at the same time. Now, during this time, your atrioventricular valves, right, your mitral valve over, or sorry, your tricuspid valve over here, and your mitral valve over here, they remain open. So some blood continues to flow into your ventricles. And that happens on both sides. So the atrioventricular valves, the tricuspid on the right-hand side, and the mitral on the left-hand side, they're open, and some of the blood flows into the ventricles as well. Okay, the pulmonary and aortic valves during this time, they stay closed. So it's not being pushed up into the blood vessels. It's just staying within the heart. Okay, so that's diastole. Heart relaxed, atrium fills up, ventricle fills up a little bit. No contraction. Now, the second part of the cardiac cycle is atrial systole, right? So the contraction of your atriums or atria. So the muscles of both the left and the right atria are going to contract at basically the same time. So deoxygenated blood from the right atrium is pushed through the tricuspid valve into the right ventricle. And oxygenated blood from the left atrium is pushed through the mitral valve. Sometimes the mitral valve is called the bicuspid valve, into the left ventricle. Okay? The semilunar valves, the pulmonary valve and the aortic valve, remained closed. Okay, so now the atria empty, the ventricles are very full, and it is time for the ventricles to contract and push the blood out into the blood vessels. So you have ventricular systole when the ventricles contract. Okay, so the muscles of both the left and the right ventricles contract at the same time. Deoxygenated blood travels from the right ventricle into the pulmonary artery. So this valve, this pulmonary valve, is going to open, and the blood is going to be pushed out. Right? These blood vessels are going to go to the lungs, and the oxygen-poor blood is going to pick up oxygen there. Now, oxygenated blood travels from the left ventricle through the aortic valve into the aorta, and then travels through all of the different arteries and aortic branches to reach all of the cells in your body and delivers them all oxygen, like Santa on Christmas, right? Oxygen Santa delivers toys to all the little girls and boy cells. Then during this, when the ventricles are contracting, right, the blood is going to squirt out anywhere there's a hole. So these valves, this tricuspid valve is going to be closed, right, and make sure all of the blood goes to the pulmonary artery and not back into the atrium, right? So the atrioventricular valves on the right and the left side, right, tricuspid, mitral, they're closed, right? And this way the blood can't flow backwards. And then the cycle begins again, right? So there's really 3 steps in this process, right? Everything is relaxed and fills up, then the atria contract, and then the ventricles contract, right? So this is the lub part, like the weaker beat of your heartbeat, and this is sort of the stronger beat of your heartbeat. So when the blood leaves your heart, it's under high pressure. And part of, assessing the health of your circulatory system is measuring the blood pressure. So blood pressure is the force that the blood makes on the walls of the arteries, okay? When there is more blood in the tube, right? There is more blood to press on the inner walls of your arteries and your blood increases. So when your ventricles contract, right, the pressure inside your arteries is greater, right? During ventricular systole, blood rushes into the aorta and arteries from the heart. This increases the pressure on the arterial walls, the artery walls, right? So think about how the pressure in a hose increases when you turn the water up, okay? And during diastole, none of the chambers of the heart are contracting and blood returns to the heart, right? So the amount of blood inside the arteries is lower and the pressure in the arteries decrease. So this corresponds with the high and low blood pressure readings that are taken at the doctor's office or pharmacy. Your blood pressure can be read by slightly compressing the arteries in your arm with a blood pressure cuff. The blood pressure during systole is called the systolic blood pressure, right? If you've ever had your blood pressure read by one of these things, you know it gives you two numbers, and it gives it to you in the form of a fraction. The top number is called your systolic blood pressure, and it's the pressure when your ventricles are squeezing, right? And then the bottom number is called your diastolic blood pressure, and that's during diastole, right? So when the heart is relaxed. So why do we take blood pressure? Why is that so important to have as medical information? So your blood pressure can change for a variety of reasons, okay, including stress, activity level, medication, and lifestyle habits. But chronic or consistent high blood pressure readings can be an indicator of disease in your circulatory system or sometimes even your kidneys. The major cause of, or the major disease linked with high blood pressure is called atherosclerosis. We have a picture of atherosclerosis over here. So atherosclerosis is when a buildup of lipids, cholesterol, and scarring narrows your arteries. So if your arteries get damaged, like sometimes sometimes your heart beats very strongly, right? And the muscles in your arteries are not as strong. Maybe because you don't do a lot of fitness activities, right? Maybe you don't exercise very often. So exercise is good because it strengthens your heart. Your heart is a muscle, and it also strengthens the muscles in your arteries. If you don't have a healthy, fit cardiovascular system or circulatory system, your muscles are weaker, right? Because you don't exercise them, and they're more likely to tear, and this will cause scarring. And the problem with scarring is that it stiffens up your arteries, right? It makes them less flexible to handle the pressure, and then you end up getting more tears and more scars, right? And what happens is if you have lipids in your bloodstream, like cholesterol, right? Lipids and cholesterol will stick to the scarring because the scarring is rough. And this can lead to the buildup of something called a plaque, right? And this plaque will narrow your blood vessels. So during this part of your blood vessel, right, pressure will be higher. It can cause more tears, or this plaque can build up over time to block off the entire artery. If this happens in your heart, you get a heart attack because your heart needs a constant supply of oxygen because it's always beating. And then if it happens in your brain, you could get a stroke, right? So it's very important to be able to assess your circulatory system health by taking blood pressure readings. So, we have some self-check homework for the heart, right? So, answers will be up for that. There's also a circulatory system sort of coloring that you can do, and a fill in the blank, and the review of the whole entire circulatory system. I'm sorry, it is sideways, but I'm fixing everything slowly in my notes to be in portrait mode, but I hadn't gotten to this one yet. And then you have a blood pressure lab to do. So this lab is actually a quiz. You don't so the lab and the quiz are combined. You'll go to the quiz, you'll watch some videos, then you'll have some questions pertaining to the information on the videos, and that's how I'm going to assess you. In a normal class, I would bring out the blood pressure cuffs, and we would learn how to read blood pressure that way, but we have to be creative because this is an online class. And then there's one more part, a small part of the lesson at the very end, talking about circulatory system health, so make sure you watch that. And that is the end of this lesson.